was this repeated story of what was called green children, the green children of Woolpit.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to just get into that because here's why. I'm creative. When I was 6 years old, I drowned in a lake in New Hampshire called Forest Lake. It's up near Littleton along the Ammonoosuc River. And when I was drowning, I remember thinking I was outside my body and seeing my body floating in the water above me. And then I was suddenly pulled to the surface by kids that were greenish in hue. They took me to a cave. I had, the details are not particularly important. But the thing that's important is, at that time in 1971, I had no idea about the quote-unquote children of Woolpit myth, or sometimes it was set in Wales or Spain or France. Now, here's the thing. Did I really have that memory in 1971 at the age of 6, or did I backwards form that memory a dozen, 14, 15 years later when I read the Woolpit myth and maybe had a dream that I thought was a memory from 14 or 15 years earlier? And when I think about that, I think about that's an interesting thing, but I'm a creative guy. And when I think about UFO stories, there seems to be this very similar thing, especially the abduction stories. There's a light, something happens, the guys with the big gray eyes, like from the Communion cover, they're looking down and operating on you. But a creative person is not going to have that very rank and file, off-the-shelf kind of story. So I'm wondering, when you look at stories like the story about the young man who differed from the 3 other people in describing the UFOs, I think that actually the more interesting cases are when there are different points of view, because many tests have shown that if a professor is giving a lecture and someone runs in and steals his briefcase, people say, oh, he was a tall guy with brown hair. No, he was a short guy. He was kind of portly. People have different point of views. So what is your take on point of views and human fallibility when it comes to these kinds of mythos?
Okay, I think the first thing you have to focus on is that I am not trying to argue for any objective reality to these objects. As a matter of fact, I almost take for granted that there is none. That whatever stimulus there is quite banal, or quite mundane, I should say. So I have no problem with the idea that there's distortion. What fascinates me is the process by which this happens. And your story, by the way, just blew my mind, and we need to go back to it. Because this, I think, is fantastically important. And I'll tell, as we go on, it may become clear why. But I think back to a fascinating article by Kevin Randall that was published in the International UFO Reporter about a pair of college students, I think in Iowa, who saw UFO land. Now, the UFO, as Randall was able to determine, was actually an airplane that they had seen coming in for a landing, I suppose, from an unusual angle or something that disoriented them. It's, we all know how very easy it is to become disoriented. But what Randall documented there is that the young man, although he didn't know what he'd seen, continued to describe it more or less accurately. The young lady, within 48 hours, had turned it into a domed disc in which she actually saw some sort of humanoid beings piloting it. Again, if I were a debunker, I would just say, okay, we can throw that out. But I'm not a debunker, so I'm going to say, we need to examine that. And I don't have the equipment to do that. Because I would need to know, among other things, what was the relationship between the two of them. They were apparently dating. How involved were they? And this is the sort of questions I asked about the young man and his pregnant young wife, who wasn't his wife, and how that affected the different perceptions. What was there that would have made this young woman so radically change her memories in the space of about 48 hours? And Kevin was quite clear that there was no insincerity at all, that she genuinely believed in what she'd seen.
Hmm.
So I think this is a tremendously important question, which broaches on the very baffling question of when people jointly observe things that can't have been there.
Hmm.
I mean, the most obvious, outstanding case of that is the miracle of the sun.
Yeah.
At Fatima in October of 1917, in which a crowd estimated by some people as 70,000 all saw the sun fall to Earth, which you and I know that it can't possibly do.
Yeah.
So how did 70,000 people see it at the same time? And I don't know. I mean, I think this is the question that ufology now, a real ufology, ought to be about.
Yeah.
Okay, now go back to the there's one story I read relatively recently that broaches on your story,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, do you know the story of Valentich? I can't remember his first name. That he disappeared, was late 70s, early 80s, something like that. That he was flying his plane a fairly short distance, and then disappeared. No one has ever.
This is like the Bermuda Triangle stuff.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, the story, it really seems to have happened. Now, I mean, I would assume that it was some ordinary accident that that's impossible now to reconstruct. But what I found interesting was the report by someone. What was his name? I can't remember his name. That he spoke with a woman who had seen an apparition in her room, who came to visit her, of a young man, and the investigator showed her a photo of Valentich, and she said, "That is the man." Now, I would assume that somehow or another she back projected what she'd seen, or what she back projected the photo onto her memory of what she'd seen.
Yeah.
And that gets us a little bit closer to your experience.
Yeah.
But now, why I found your experience so exciting is, I don't know, I did a blog post on the Green Children of Woolpit.
Yeah.
And my reason for doing that is I was trying to answer one of the most intriguing questions in the mythological study of UFOs, which is, where do the little green men come from?
Yeah.
Nobody. Okay, I may exaggerate. There may be one or two, but almost no one reports when they see the UFO occupants. Almost no one remembers them as being green. So why does that become an indestructible trope?
Yeah.
If no one ever experiences it? And I tried to look for antecedents in mythology and popular culture.
Yeah.
I did not let the Jolly Green Giant go unnoticed, because the Jolly Green Giant was originally a little green man. It was the produce, the beans or whatever, that were giant. And one of the background stories is those green children who appeared at Woolpit.
Yeah.
And who claim to have come through a tunnel.
Yeah.
And now, if you spontaneously, in a near-death experience, were rescued by green children, then I would say this Jung is triumphant.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dealing with an archetype spontaneously appearing. But even if you did back project, from reading about the Green Children of Woolpit, why should you have done that?